No. Okay, Catherine.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Wood, and I'm the Executive Director at the Prairie Center for Ecumenism. And Nick is the Ecumenical Officer of the Archdiocese of Regina. And we've partnered together to bring the study to you in today and in May. Nick, do you have anything to say about technology or any other announcements?
Yes, so we're going to be using the raise hand feature. If you are not familiar with that, let me just quickly show you where to find that. It is at the bottom of your screen. You will find a button that says React. It has a heart on it for most of us. And if you click that once, you'll see a number of options, and one of them is raise hand. When you raise your hand, it will move your it will place a hand in the corner of your screen, kind of like this. And if you're looking at mine, you should be able to see it. And then when you lower your hand, it disappears. When your hand is raised, it moves you to the beginning of the photo array so that we can find you, and then we can ask you to ask your question. Okay. Um, Now I will. The other thing you should know is that we are live streaming this to YouTube. I'm also making a backup recording. The recording is just intended for backup use, and it became useful last Thursday because my technology didn't actually work with the live stream, and so I was able to recover it by using the backup. So I'm going to continue to do that. And that's it for the technical announcements.
Thanks, Nick. So to start, we'd like to acknowledge that we're all treaty people and live and work in the traditional gathering land in Saskatchewan and across Canada. We celebrate and affirm the sacredness of the land and the ongoing responsibility to work on reconciliation among those who inhabit the land. So please feel free to acknowledge what treaty number from where you live in the chat box below. So we're very grateful for that you're all able to be here today, and we're looking forward to this next study session in our journey through the Nicene Creed. In 2025, Week of Prayer for Christian Unity, the prayers and reflections highlight the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, the first ecumenical council, and the theme for this is the question, do you believe this? We believe that by using these resources, we might gain a deeper knowledge of the Nicene Creed, which is emphasized in the Bible readings for today. Our opening prayer today is taken from the book In God's Reconciling Grace, written by Father Bernard de Margerie, the Prairie Center's founding director. So let's take a quick moment to pray. Holy Spirit, come and shed your light upon us. May our common study of God's holy word draw us closer into fellowship and obedience within the body of Christ, your Son. Amen. So we have an exciting lineup of excellent presenters, and we're very grateful that they all agreed to be a part of this virtual study. Today, our theme is the Incarnation of the Son, and we would like to welcome the Reverend Christine Burton as today's presenter. Christine is an Anglican priest in the Diocese of Coppell, and she is serving in Weyburn currently. So welcome to you, Christine.
Thank you very much. I want to say is that Catherine invited me to do this early on in April, and what with Lent and Holy Week, I didn't get back to the note until the week after, and I was flat on my back, sick as could be, but it's like, hey, a study session, I'm all up for that. And so I said yes, and then I started looking at the topics, and I hadn't twigged onto the whole Nicene Creed thing, and I'm thinking, these are awfully big subjects. And then I realized, yeah, the Nicene Creed, kind of big subjects there. So I will also say I live on Treaty 4 land now, but prior to that, I had been living in Ottawa. I was a Fed, and that being the reality is I'm very PowerPoint heavy. So my presentation will involve a lot of us looking at some PowerPoint slides. And with that, I'm going to now get myself started. Let me find the right one. That. And then to make myself share it, back to you, and I go share. Nope, that didn't, but there we are. Okay. The Incarnation. I believe in Jesus Christ, who came down and was incarnate and made man. We had some readings for this, which were provided from the community at Bose. And so I thought I would use them because they do inform some of what we are talking about, obviously. So from Jeremiah, the days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise I made to the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch to spring up for David, and he shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In those days, Judah will be saved, and Jerusalem will live in safety. And this is the name by which it will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. The psalm repeats the same theme of righteousness. In his days may righteousness flourish and peace abound until the moon is no more. And then this is the reading for Christmas Day. It's one of my absolute favorite readings. And we who go to the midnight services often don't get to hear this one. And it's the beginning of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. So now, because I don't believe in playing I've got a secret when I do presentations, I want to walk you through sort of all of the thinking I had here. So Carnival. Carnival is a big party. How does that fit? Carnival actually means to leave behind meat. And so at the beginning of Lent in the Middle Ages, and particularly in the Latinate countries, they gave up meat, carne, and valente, which was to give up. Chili con carne, that's chili with meat, the carne. Carnivore, we who eat meat, or those animals who eat meat. And incarnate, to be embodied in flesh, in meat. Now there's a little story of a child who went to sleep and there was a great storm and it woke him up and he was afraid and started crying. And his mother came in to comfort him and said, it's okay. And remember, when you hear the big noises, that's just noise and God will protect you from all of it. So you can pray to God. And the little boy replied, I want a God with skin on. Sometimes just praying to the ineffable and the disembodied, the transcendent God can be a bit of an issue. And so we have our brother Jesus. Now, as I view the Incarnation, I see it as God making the ordinary, the human condition, holy. It's also important to note that God did not move away from his view in Genesis, which was talked about last week, when God saw it all, including humanity, and said that it was very good. God has not changed God's mind and said, oh, human nature is not a good thing. God continues to value human nature in all of its frailties. And matter matters. The material, the physical is an important part of our faith and our spirituality. God becoming fully human, sharing our human needs, whether for food, for human contact, for everything that we need, God is part of that. And of course, it's because it is heaven come down to earth. Emmanuel, as we say at Christmas so often, God with us. I would also point out that in the ascension, when God went back, so when Jesus became human, it's called the hypostatic union because he was fully human and fully God. When he returned to God, he didn't suddenly turn into just the divine again. He remained fully human and fully God. So on his return to the Godhead, he remained the hypostatic union, and our full human nature was taken up to heaven with him. It can also be seen as a narrative arc from Genesis through to Revelation. So as I said earlier, it's a continuation of creation. God continues to create, and part of that view is that humans are very good. They are worthy to have the divine embodied within them. It's a fulfillment of the promise to David that was mentioned in both our Psalm and our First Testament reading in Jeremiah, where there was a promise that would be made to David, that from David, from the very human David in all of his frailties, would come the Messiah. It's also necessary for redemption. We all often talk about the creche and the cross, and the creche precedes the cross, and it was from that creche that salvation and redemption was able to happen. Without the creche, the cross would not be possible. And then I'd like to bring people to a final image in Revelation. And in that final image in Revelation, heaven comes down to earth. Jesus as king, and God dwells among his people is spoken of in Revelation, just as God dwelt amongst his people during the time of Jesus. At the end, it is expected that Jesus, God, will be down on earth. We don't go to a disembodied somewhere, but we remain with God on earth, God's people rejoicing and co-creating the kingdom. Now, we were given, those of us who are doing some of the presentations, were given both some old readings and some new readings. So Gregory of Skevra, who was an Armenian living in the 12th and 13th century, did some writing where he talked about what is the nature of being human, what is the nature of being an embodied in the full human nature. And that is all human passions, as I said, hungered for food, thirsted for water, felt weariness, slept, who wept, with the raising of Lazarus, Jesus wept. He took on the human body in order to suffer with us, and then he died within that mortal body so that we might be raised with him. I also looked to a very modern scholar on the Incarnation, who is the proto-presbyter Father Alexander Schmemann, and he was in the early part of the 20th century and a key thinker on the Incarnation. And he views the Incarnation as central to any kind of genuine or true understanding of the world and the church and how they work together. And as it says, it's a radical event that transforms everything, calls for a new understanding of life and purpose in the church. Now, my next slide is a very long one, and I'm not going to go through it in a big way, but I wanted to give you sort of some of his key thoughts. I assume that our presentations can be made available to everybody afterwards. Okay. And so it's, the world as sacrament of Christ's presence. It's, if he is of the world and he is holy, then the world is holy. And that we have a different sense of creation. Again, it's not just a thing, but it is the ultimate gift, and it is holy as well. The Eucharist, and I'll come back to that, but it's the Eucharist as love. It's not just a meal, but an actual manifestation, a true presence of Christ's love. Whether you believe in the true presence of the body and blood, it is a true presence of Christ's love. And then we have the sign and means and life in the new creation. Now, there's a whole wackadoodle of heresies about the Incarnation, and they are heresies that we are sometimes wont to fall into because they're easy and they make sense when we think about it. I used to have one of my profs who used to say, we will defy the Arians, and we will defy the Manichaeans, and so on, in all of these things, as we were doing various things in our Eucharist and so on. Now, Arianism denies the divine nature of God. It says that he was created by God and is subordinate to God the Father. And that's part of why John, that we looked at the beginning, the Gospel of John, says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jesus is the Word and was there at the beginning with God the Creator. Now, Docetism, which the Gnostics and Manichaeans advanced, says that Jesus only appeared as human. He wasn't truly human. So we say, no, he is fully human as well as fully divine. That's that hypostatic union that I referenced. Then Apollinarianism is a bit of a mixed bag, and it's versus fully and both. He said he had a divine nature, but a human body. Again, it's not fully and both at one time. And Nestorianism says that he was two separate persons. There was the person of Jesus Christ, God, Son of God, and there was the person of Jesus Christ, a man, two separate, not together. So, and then the last one, Ecumenism. If I'm pronouncing it right, we're not in Kansas anymore, but that is that our frail and broken human nature was absorbed into the divine. And so human nature no longer existed. It was all in the divine. None of these are the truth of the Incarnation as generally received by the Christian tradition, and certainly not in the modern era. Most of these have gone by the wayside, although you do still have people who say, I need to be very ascetic and get rid of all of my human wants and human desires and human needs, and just become a frail stick until I am absorbed into the fully divine. And no, our human needs and wants are part of the Incarnation. So this is in terms of what I saw with all of the foregoing. It's our spirituality and understanding of Christ is and must be rooted in the physicality of the Incarnation, even as we seek to and actually do experience the divine. And when you look at it, the Eucharist, which we view as communion with Christ, with God, it's a physical encounter. It's by taking in physical food that we then encounter the Christ. So I put up some questions about the Incarnation that I thought might help start people, but I'm more interested in what yours are in terms of, why is this necessary? How does it relate to the Trinity? I've tried to talk about those a little bit. And what are the theological implications? And we can look at those, But what I'm really interested in is in your question. So I'm going to close that for the moment so that we can come back and look at all of you and see what questions you might have. So are there any in the chat? Oh, we've got the readings, nothing in there at the moment. Does anybody have questions, thoughts, observations, things that confused you? Sandra, surely you have something. I know.
No,
Let me put you
I
on the spot.
always have an opinion, of course, or something.
Yeah, never at a loss for an opinion.
Hardly ever. Well, I got caught on the your description of Nestorianism, and Jesus had a human nature and person and a divine nature and person, and they were separate. And I remember somebody telling me once that they explaining to me that when Jesus got kind of angry with the woman who who asked him to heal her son, and well, asked her to heal her son,
heal her daughter or son,
or her daughter, I mean, and she sorry, her daughter, and he was kind of nasty to her.
Yeah, don't give the children's food to the dogs.
Yeah, well, see, they said that was his human nature speaking, not his divine.
Not his divine nature.
Yeah. So it just reminds us that, it's all those heresies, they all point to things that we struggle with as we try to understand who Jesus is, if he's fully human and fully divine, because it's easier to write it down than to kind of conceive it.
Yeah, well, and it also is about people not understanding some of the true meaning of that lesson, like that he did that in order to call forth from her a commentary that could then demonstrate that God and his blessings were available to all. I see that Josh has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. And Sandra, thank you for that question too. I think it gestures in the direction that I'm really curious about, which is when it comes to the folks in the pews, and probably a fair number of ministers and clergy as well. What are our metaphors, or what metaphors do we often use to express this union of the human and the divine in Jesus, to express the incarnation, out at the popular level?
Yeah, I think that when we use the language of I am the living bread or I am the living water, things like that, things that are themselves physical. Now, in a modern, physics and astrophysics sort of context, we understand that light is a something as well. But, at the time, I think, sort of that was used and is a physical thing, but at the time, I don't think that would have been understood. But certainly it is now. So I think all of those physical dimensions, when you say, I am the living bread, I am the living water, I am the way, a pathway, the sense of is your feet can be in contact with the earth. And I think that's interesting there, because feet are often considered the most dirty part of the human body, and certainly were at that time. And so that if Christ is a pathway and we're putting our dirtiest parts upon that pathway, is that God and Jesus do not reject even the worst part of us. And then I am the light, of course, also has that. Truth currently doesn't seem to have I don't have a sense of truth in a physical sense. That's another language that he used. But that may be something that in another millennia, people may come to be understanding truth in a more physical form. But I think that he deliberately used words that had very much meaning in their day-to-day lives in order to demonstrate that.
Thank you, Christine. That's helpful.
Are there other questions or thoughts? Paul, you come from a different tradition. Does your tradition have something different to observe on this?
Yeah, I guess what comes to my mind that's interesting is that I think the incarnation has to do with how we understand spirituality in general, and it's not about escaping who we are as human beings created in God's image, but becoming even more fully who we are, more fully human. And it's not about trying to get out of this world and get into heaven in the sweet by and by. It's about somehow God's interested in the whole world, all of us and everything around us. And so our calling is somehow connected with that too. It's not about escaping the world. It's about learning how to really be in the world in a good way. And so that's what comes to my mind is sometimes in my evangelical heritage, there's this idea of getting out of the world, and it's not just in that's a tradition that goes all the way back to the Desert Fathers in some ways, but learning how to be in the world as God's people.
Right. Jesus said, that, to pray always. It's not about only praying in the church or the synagogue. It was praying in our day-to-day lives as we walk and work and play and do everything of that variety. That God, as you say, is interested in us and in our experiences of work and play and family, and calls us to pray. And if that pray may be some days it's you're dealing with your coworker, your child, your pet, or whatever, and you're going, good Lord, like that is a prayer. If you understand and allow yourself to say, I am trying to be with God in my very human situation of something not going right. I think you're spot on. And Jesus often preaching, not in the temple, preached in the temple, preached on the hillside, from the water, and as he walked with people, and so on. So again, Jesus demonstrating that I am the pathway. As we are walking along the path, you can be encountering me, and so forth. I am the one who feeds you, as with the feeding of the 5,000, 7,000, is I am giving you what you need, both in word and in bread, and I am the bread. So again, that not getting away from the very human. Thank you. That's, I think, yeah, you're spot on there. Thank you. Is there a relationship between theosis and the incarnation? She says, I'd have to look up theosis on my little device to remember exactly what it is. I apologize.
No problem, Christine. It's Leslie speaking.
Okay.
I recently learned about this at a service at Christ Lutheran that we studied theosis to mean the idea of humans becoming more God-like, and that there is a transition that we experience through our worship and our relationship deepening with God that creates this type of relationship. So that was a service just on Friday night that I heard. So that's what made me wonder if that's part of this process as well.
Okay. I did pull it up on my little device here just to take a quick look at it. And I went, okay. And it's, my mother is Ukrainian Orthodox, and this is in fact something that often is spoken of in the Eastern Church, whether that be Eastern Orthodox or the Eastern Catholics. But it's as you said, it speaks to the process of becoming like God, attaining a union with God. And the more we sort of follow the path, follow Christ's example and so on, it's not that we become God, but to have union with God.
Exactly.
To share in sort of God's, like when we say, thy will be done in the Lord's Prayer, is sort of, that's a desire to merge our will with God's will and to find union with God in that regard and to become like God. And it's like, I mean, Jesus was human in all manners except sin. And Jesus, the way he existed as a human, was to love even those whom it was difficult to love, to forgive those whom it was difficult to forgive, to heal those, whether they were believers or not, and to you know, and to say, no, sin is not what this is about. And so theosis, it's not becoming God, but sharing with and becoming like, so that we are continually more compassionate, more filled with love, and that our actions reflect the kind of compassion and love that Jesus expressed. I see that Nick, is that helpful?
That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay. And I see Nick has his hand raised as well.
Yeah. So the other translation of theosis is sometimes divinization or participation. So it's a Eucharistic concept as well. I actually, what I wanted to say though was the slide that you had with Schmeemann's the quote from Schmeemann, the Orthodox theologian. He was speaking of the I think Christ is the sacrament of the world, I think is what the reference was.
Bring it back up if you like.
It's okay. I was actually going to reference a Catholic theologian of a similar time period, Edward Skillebecks, who spoke about about Christ as the primordial sacrament. So if we understand the Catechism teaches us that a sacrament is an invisible or is a visible sign of an invisible grace, right? That Christ is the truly visible sign in the Incarnation of the grace, the gifts that is given from God for humanity and for all creation, and that so there's this. So we can understand that all of the sacraments, whether we count 2 or 7, or however many we might want to count, that they are expressions, or they are ways in which the primordial sacrament of Christ is made present in the world, and then it can then go on further, as the Second Vatican Council spoke of the Church as the sacrament, as a sacramental encounter as well. And so we see ourselves as engaged in mission and ministry, in being the hands and feet, so to speak, of Christ in the world, bringing that grace to the world, and so our very ministry is sacramental as well, right? And so we can't divorce our Eucharistic theology from our mission theology, right?
Yeah. And it's as, yes, and you know, referring back to what you said about Schmeemann, and where he said that a true understanding of the unity of the world and the church as a sacrament and so on, and it's the church is to also to embody creation and is to serve creation in the same way as Christ has and is serving creation in every day in a sacramental way. Yeah.
And from that Orthodox perspective, the cosmological dimensions of salvation, of all of creation, would be something that would be emphasized not only by Schmemann but others earlier,
Yes.
and is something that is increasingly being recognized in our contemporary theology as we have become more focused on environmental questions and things like that. So.
Yeah. And then with the Eucharist, my bishop, Helen Kennedy, when she is ready to serve Eucharist, she often uses the phrase, become what you eat, and so it's that then also fits in with some of that divinization and that, the theosis, in the sense of, as we share in the Eucharist, is that is an opportunity for, as I say, communion. Communion is not merely to share with, in the sense of I have something, you have something, but to share in the way that we sort of share traits and very nature.
Yeah.
Josh is sharing a couple of books with us. I see a couple of resources are being shared down there. Okay. All right. More information on theosis. I'm going to have to go off and read about that myself, learn a bit more. Okay. Are there any other questions? We've got a few minutes left. Alan, go ahead. Alan, you're mute. Alan, you're mute. Alan, you're mute. You need to hit the speaker. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, in all of this irrationality of the incarnation, I guess I have always been concerned of how you make this meaningful to the person in the pew. We get caught in a lot of our theological jargon that is really only meaningful to those of us who are involved, probably professionally, in the church circles. And so I guess I would go with it from starting with the human perspective in order to relate the incarnation to the person in the pew, by reminding us all that there is something unique about being human that we need to start with, and that uniqueness is that all human beings have some kind of a sense of a power beyond ourselves, a reality beyond ourselves, which of course we refer to as the divine. And that, I think, rings true to the person in the pew, because we know of no other created creature that has that kind of sense, at least as far as we know, that wonders and speculates and thinks about the connection between humanity and whatever power there is beyond ourselves. And for that reason, I think the incarnation rings true to the person who sits in the pew, because they recognize that that's what their humanness is really all about, and they know that. And in that sense, the teaching and the preaching of the incarnation is not a formidable kind of thing to express, but something that does ring true because of our uniqueness as being human beings.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue to the story I was going to close with. It is my favorite story about the incarnation. And it's a simple story, but as often is the case, the simple stories carry a lot of truth and weight in them. And many of you may have heard it, but it's the story of the family in which the dad was not a believer, but the mother was, and she had raised the children up. And so they left the house on Christmas Eve to go to the Christmas service. And he stayed at home, sitting in his chair, waiting for them to return. And as he was sitting there reading, he heard a thump on the window. Didn't know what it was, but okay, fine, something. And he heard another thump and another. And he got up and went to look out the window. And what did he find below the window but a whole little bevy of partridges? you know, the prairie partridges that we see in the winter. And he could see that what's happening is they're trying to fly in towards the window, the light and the warmth and everything there. And they keep hitting the window and falling onto the ground, and they're stunned. And there's this little group, and they're wandering around. They don't know what to do. They're leaderless. So he goes out and he tries to shoo them away from the window. Go somewhere else. You know, this is get under the tree or something like that. There's other stuff. He tried sprinkling food that would sort of try to, but no, they just huddled up ever closer and closer together. And others would come and fly into the window too. And he was, what can I do? How can I get them? And he was trying everything he could, scaring them, encouraging them, yelling at them, trying to move them along. And he thought to himself, I don't know what to do. If only I were a partridge, I could make them understand. And at that moment, the church bells tolled midnight. And I've always thought that that's such a wonderful way of understanding that God, you know, sort of like wanting us to understand, came down in our form so that we could understand and be saved. So with that, as I say, my favorite story, so I tear up over it, is perhaps we'll close in prayer. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this opportunity to come together, to encounter one another in human form via computer. The divine and the human can be expressed and seen and experienced in so many ways, and we are blessed that you have given us these resources. Let us come to a deeper understanding of how our true nature is called to follow you, to live as you taught us, to understand that you are truly our brother and have given us the way to become one with the Lord. Help us to look upon everyone we meet for the light of Christ that lives in them, and to always be Christ's hands and feet, so that we with him may be raised in glory. We ask this in his most holy name. Amen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Christine. You've given us lots to think about and reflect upon. Thank you to all of you for coming today and joining us in this study session. I'll remind you that we'll be meeting again tomorrow at 12:15. So, and then the following Tuesday as well. So thanks again for everyone and joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Christine.
And thanks, Josh. I didn't see your comment until now. An excellent point.
Oh, right.
Thank you.
Good. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.